Dzień dobry, witamy się z Państwem tutaj zgromadzonym w Muzeum Architektury oraz tym już, jak mamy informację, zgromadzonym po drugiej stronie oka kamery. Jest to sobotni poranek, jest to drugi dzień Dolnośląskiego Festiwalu Architektury, którego tematem przewodnim jest Miasto Solidarne i widzimy tu parę twarzy, które chyba chcą zaliczyć cały program. Już widzieliśmy Was wczoraj, widzimy Was dzisiaj, bardzo nas to cieszy.
Ale jest też parę nowych twarzy, więc tutaj przypomnimy, że to jest już 10. jubileuszowa edycja Dolnośląskiego Festiwalu Architektury, który jest objęty w tym roku programem kuratorskim. Opiekują się nim architektki z Miasto Pracowni, Barbara Nawrocka i Dominika Wilczyńska. Witamy Was wszystkich.
I jako, że jest to moment na przejście na język angielski, to przejdziemy na język angielski.
Tak, tutaj poinformujemy, że cały nasz poranek będzie w tym języku. Więc czas zacząć.
So we warmly welcome you on this Saturday morning on second day of Lower Silesia Architectural Festival, which theme is Solidarity. We welcome all of the faces that we seen yesterday and that we see today for the first time.
We also welcome all the new people that join us today to celebrate this architectural festivity. It's 10th edition of Lower Silesia Architecture Festival. It's our anniversary. We can finally be together here, not in the online version, but also we say hi to all the people that are with us through internet. And let's start.
Today, together with the entire group of SARP organizers, the Museum of Architecture, and many outstanding artists and creators, they have prepared quite a program for us. The event has three themes: the environment, society, and mother, and that will be our main aspects for today and for tomorrow as well.
There are many activities that are happening. For example, right now there are new creators, young architects, artists that work on workshops somewhere around here. So we can cross fingers for them. Tomorrow we will see the results of their work.
Today we will have to move a little bit, not only between Barbara and Muzeum Architektury, but also all around the Wrocław. But we will begin with the lectures of the creators of Ambulatorium exhibition.
Yeah, later on we will move to the street Ofiar Oświęcimskich near Zeto, where Jacek Sterczewski will wait for a walk around the city for us.
And then we will meet in Barbara at 4 p.m. Where there will be discussion panel on the caring on the topic of caring of people and society. And we would like to remind you that there will be an option to leave your child under protection of some lovely people there.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end, we will meet here again to see the exhibition and like announcement of the winners of architecture cadres, and then there will be like movie Honeyland.
In the Romanesque Hall, you can enjoy the exhibition Ambulatorium. This is curated by Dominika Wilczyńska and Barbara Nawrocka, to which they invited some artists and architects from all around Europe, Poland, Ukraine, Sweden, and the USA.
Ambulatory is like a medical term that has a meaning of zone of emergency assistant in crisis situations. The exhibition became laboratory of architecture and art for the solution of those kind of crises, and also some manifestos even, we would say.
One of the main themes of the festival is matter, so the elements and materials used in the exhibition have come from previous exhibition in Museum of Architecture, which we really like to thank you for not using the other materials to create it.
Maybe someone even will notice with nostalgia, so common exhibitions.
Yes, exactly.
To participate in this laboratory, the creators invited 7 people to form international teams to work. One of them is Studiowidoki, which is Milena Trzcińska and Łukasz Stępnik, together with Anastasia Panomarova, and they worked on architectural flexibility in response to crisis and the flow of building functions.
Ukrainian architect EUGENIA BEVZ and architect from Poland, Karolina Keyzer, they have been working on the part called Unit of Care.
Dominika Janicka entered to the collaboration with director and cyber activist MAGDA SZPECHT to jointly propose a complete new function for the seized yachts of Russian oligarchs.
So without any further ado, we would like to invite the first artist, who is Eugenia BEVZ. She studied architecture at ETH Zurich at the University of Construction Kiev, and she taught their seminars at Faculty of Architecture, Theory and Project Planning. Between 2014 and 2017, she worked in New York and Rotterdam at OMA, and with Rema Koolhaasa. She is with us online, so we will invite her in a few seconds here.
Us online. I think we can start with your presentation, so the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this exhibition and today's conversation especially. And I am thrilled to actually be the first one to be opening today's discussion on solidarity and design. Thank you. I am Eugenia BEVZ. I am an architect currently based in Sweden and born in Ukraine. And I would like to share with you my presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes, everything is fine.
All right, great. So this presentation is called Reinterpreting Solidarity. And when I was asked to speak about solidarity, I looked retrospectively at my work, and I actually selected projects that I believe hold solidarity objectives in the design. I would like to start by showing my career's roadmap. At the place where I started in Ukraine, that's where I actually received my Master of Architecture diploma and worked at the university several years. And after that, I have moved to Switzerland to study at ETH Zurich at the program for Master of Advanced Studies in Urban Design. And this is a program that focuses on tactical urbanisms and bottom-up approaches to urban design. And we had our exhibition, kind of graduation show at MoMA in New York. So therefore, I moved to join my partner in New York, and kind of privately, personally was present at the exhibition opening. And there in New York, I got a position to work as an architect for OMA New York office, and that's how my journey with OMA started. I worked there for several years on different competitions and commissions, and after that I moved to the headquarters of OMA based in Rotterdam, and that's where I actually worked as part of the think tank, as part of the research branch of OMA called IMO, and worked on several also commissions for that. And now I'm currently based in Sweden, as I mentioned, and I have been working and living here in Sweden for more than 4 years. And I was part of the Swedish architectural practice called OKK Plus, led by Karoliną Keyzer, and the office is based in Stockholm. And currently I'm pursuing my personal practice in architecture in Stockholm. So I'd like to start with the project that we were doing together with Mass Urban Design at ETH Zurich. This is the next slide you see. It's called, the project called Veranda Product, and it was exhibited at MoMA, New York City. You can see on the image a big panorama. This is the image that shows the imaginary city, like Rio de Janeiro, but on the, actually what it does, it is collage have a catalog of design elements that you see on the right side. So it also, those elements are like small, basically, objects that are helping to improve the life of the inhabitants of the favelas. They are placed on the verandas. That's called the veranda products. And those small elements, they are like bringing the joy, and they're improving the lives of the residents on a daily basis. So making change on a bigger scale. You can go live on the product website and see the catalog of those products. That was done together with rural architects, and something fantastic as a part of my project at ETH Zurich. The next, this is an example of the kind of bottom-up approach of urbanism. The next project I'm going to speak about is the opposite example. This is bottom-up approach, bottom-down approach, top-down approach, and this is the Washington DC project as a part of my work at OMA New York office. That's commissioned by Events DC, official organization that holds the memoriam site for Robert F. Kennedy. And currently it is a vast kind of parking lot site with area concrete, and it's underused. And we suggested to create the lively development with the sports center, market, and different facilities to use for community. And we also suggested the network of bridges that will connect this development to the residential area across the street, and will kind of bring live joy to the area and make it used by the community. And that was published in Washington Post, and the project is now underway in development. It's a big master plan project. That is an example of a different kind of social proposal to welcome all the initiatives of development of Arabic language under one digital umbrella, and develop the platform to actually use and promote Arabic language within the young and population in United Arab Emirates. That was also commissioned to kind of OMA office, but in Rotterdam, and we looked at the different ways how we can actually make all the arts connected to language, as a poetry, literature, calligraphy, performing arts to work together to kind of promote and develop Arabic language. And we proposed an app and different catalogs and exhibitions to have the full overview and the kind of a strong initiative to move that idea forward. After I moved to Sweden, I worked a lot on a housing project, and the next 3 projects I'm going to speak about is about how we can reinterpret housing banality and having the solidarity aspect of design as a part of the agenda. And I'm going to speak mostly about that part in this selected project. But before I move forward to showing you actually project, I would like to explain a little bit what is the design methodology and the process behind the design that I usually use to actually reinterpret some features in the design. So here you see the very simple kind of 3 buttons, rewind, plane, forward. So when I start designing, I usually go a little bit backwards and rewind and look at the history and do the research and try to indicate the actually areas which need reinterpretation and adjustment, some areas that can be developed further and that can bring innovation and a new quality to the design. And afterwards, we are going forward with the design and reinterpreting the different features in a new way. For example, that is a project that currently on the way in a development, and I'm going to speak only about one feature of that project as an example to the methodology. This is a Khrushchevka affordable housing project. It was vastly built in the USSR after World War II to actually bring the opportunity for families, for privacy and life to have their own unit. This is a photo from Darnica Square in Kiev. They have a big kind of vast amount of built there in the areas. And here we see on the next slide the Khrushchevka plan. That is a typical plan that you see is very economic. So the main feature that it was built mainly from brick or panels. It was maximum 5 floors without elevators, and it was the kind of the minimal amount of area that the family needs. Most providing 2-room apartments, but also holding 1-room apartment and 3-room apartments. That actually had of course, it benefited the society widely because it kind of provided everyone with their private space. But then those houses have kind of had a downside, of course. They had no elevators, they had no storage, they had no room for bikes or strollers. And speaking of apartment layout, we had dark hallways, passing rooms, and inflexible layout. So therefore, we look backwards how the housing, the most popular unit in USSR was built, and therefore indicated what was there. And the positive feature was that they all had a balcony. And the balcony is a very special feature that actually is widely popular to have privatized in post-Soviet countries, but also having like an extension of your life space. And Alexander Burlaka, the artist from Ukraine, he had an amazing book that calls Balcony Chic, that actually shows how those balconies are being inhabited and kind of personalized in the housing. So you can see here the examples from the book that shows an extension of living space outwards the street, and different ways how people inhabit those balconies. So I thought that it was a brilliant idea, actually, and what if we can use the balcony to actually suggest some more flexibilities to those layouts of the apartment. So then many people have the privacy in their spaces. Because what I haven't mentioned, that many of Khrushchevkas that had passing rooms that we would not be able to actually have your own privacy to the room, but you need to pass through the room to get to the bedroom. So here is a project that I'm currently working on that calls Zielońki TM. Zielońki, it's like green, if to translate it from Ukrainian. And that shows the example of how the balcony can be a special features providing an extra quality to the planning structure of the apartment. And when it becomes like an kind of the space, the shared space within the family, and also becomes like a passage room, and it becomes like a solution to the problem that the young families is facing when they need more rooms. And this is a diagram that shows actually how those balconies can go extended in a facade, and how can they actually become the part of the, let's say, organized informality on the facade that is currently unorganized. Here, if we look more closely on the plans of those apartments, you can see this is a two-room apartment, one of the most popular, and those layouts actually show how actually by aiding the balcony, you can create the circulation around those spaces and therefore provide privacy to the young families, for example, having heat, or the if they have some relative to live with them and they need extra room. So sometimes it's like from minimal option to maximal privacy option, when you can add space to have separate kitchen, or you can add, for example, balcony and have circulation around those rooms without disturbing anyone. As I told, it's just one of the features that I wanted to highlight, how to work with those elements of, like, let's say, solidarity in design, providing of small features, big changes to the layouts. And those are examples of one of the blocks that you can have a look at the typical floor plan with 1, 2, or 3-room apartments. And those 2-room apartments, because of those small change of the balcony, can become a 3-room apartments. And the same feature can be from 3-room apartments can become to 4-room apartment with a very small area, but the and on a ground floor, there are more features, so it can have the shared facilities, for example, daycare facility or preschool, and some shared kitchen to the entrance area. And of course, it can keep some of the 2-room apartment, which is the most popular, with and provide a garden entrance to those. On the bottom floor, there can be room for strollers, bikes, and it is a work in progress. I wanted to share with you how we actually use a methodology to provide the qualities to design. The next project I'm going to mention is in Harlem, New York. It was actually answer to the brief to the competition organized by New York's, and the question was to answer how can you provide the units to the very small narrow lots in New York City, and so those lots usually they have traditional development plan with a section with minimal shared space and maximum private space, but also a very compromised insulation, because the inner space becomes very dark, and then therefore they need to have some type of the hole in the middle, and that is not very accessible and doesn't create much quality. But we suggested an idea to actually split them in two and to provide the shared space that is going to connect them and bring quality. So it will kind of suggest efficient private unit layout combined with shared space. So then it's especially valuable for New York, that it creates your privacy, and that is also security, and that is the space that is protected from outdoors environment, and then you can have some shared family gathering or friends over there. And the last project I'm going to mention is actually called Agricultura. That is the suggestion to one of the European organized competition. That one is an answer to the brief in Finland, Lake Toulouse. And it is a development strategy for post-agrarian village that actually has suggested rehabilitation strategies for and focused on a development of a special kind of post-industrial village. And what it's doing is actually creates a social infrastructure and enhances industry with technology, research and development center, and mixed housing, residency with residency program and tourism. So you see on the perimeter of the belt that of the housing units, apartment blocks, individual housing, some production areas, and also the growing facilities and the research and development center. And in the middle, there is suggested to create a cultural village with many spaces for people to actually rest and enjoy themselves and spend some time enjoying the nature as well. So that is the important strategy to actually bring the population back to the areas that are currently declining. And this is the last project I'm going to talk about. Therefore, I wanted to thank everyone for being with me today and listening to the lecture. And I hope that you're enjoying exhibition and that you will be joining the other lectures by architects.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your really interesting lecture. If you have like still more time, we will ask in our audience there are some questions.
Of course.
Has someone any questions to our guest? Okay, I think everything was then very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for inviting me to be a part of that exhibition and to speak about my work. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we will stay here on the line if you want to. And
Yes, that's great.
Thank you. So now it's time for our another guest to present the lecture on the topic of cyber activism during the war. It will be MAGDA SZPECHT. She is a theater artist, director, author of installation performances. She graduated of the Faculty of Directing at the State Higher School of Theater Arts in Krakow, as well as journalism and social communication in the University of Wrocław. She's creating I'm very sorry. She's creating theatrical productions. She also conducts workshops for actors, and she's focusing in her works on topics of feminism and technologies. Please, let's welcome her with some.
And Magda is here with us with a special guest from Kharkov, whose name is Jola, and she's lovely forlect friend. And we invite you for the scene.
Maybe we can clap in this version.
Where is my presentation? Open slider. Mogę sobie ten postawić albo wziąć do ręki może. Hello everyone. I'm very happy to see you here. My name is Magda. I'm a cyber elf. Cyber elves are activists who fight against Russian disinformation, fake news, trolling, and support the spread of verified news about the war in Ukraine. Cyber elves also take part in open source intelligence activities. In other words, we use publicly available sources and tools for reconnaissance and gathering data. In our activities, anonymity and cybersecurity are crucial things. So we meet on servers on Discord and sometimes on Twitter. We work in a close communities, and most of our work is invisible for public. But since the beginning of the Russian invasion, I follow more than 70 Ukrainian channels on Telegram every day. Telegram is the most important social media during this war. It's more popular than Instagram or Twitter in Ukraine. This app is quite different than the Western social media, which use behavioral targeting. It means that each feed is different and the content that you see on your social media is chosen by the algorithm for you. There is no such a thing on Telegram. That's what makes it quite different and more wild and censor-free, I would say. Yesterday, when I came back home after the opening of the exhibition, I found on Telegram the photo that you see behind me. I found this picture on the Telegram called UNIAN, the Union of Ukrainian Broadcasters. Since my work for the exhibition is the project about turning the seized yacht of Roman Abramovich, the Russian oligarch, into post-war healing hub, my first thought when I saw this picture was that they should go on a journey to recover. This couple lives in Bakhmut, which is now on the front line, and the most heavy fighting is happening there. One of the most important tools for cyber elves and cyber activists and open source intelligence is Google Maps. I spent a lot of time walking on the streets of Ukrainian cities on Google Maps to learn more about Ukraine, to understand the conflict in a better way, and to support Ukrainians. What is very, very sad for me is that all the pictures from Bakhmut and also from Mariupol from the past allows you to walk on the street of the city that doesn't know yet about its future destruction, about what will happen. So the cities that are now turned into rubble, they are completely annihilated. You can still have a walk on the streets using Google Maps. This is the these are houses in Bakhmut. I went there on Google Maps yesterday. These are photos from 2021. The place looks like this right now. The house is destroyed. Russians are shelling Bakhmut in a very strong and chaotic manner. And in the before war in Bakhmut, there were 70,000 people living. This is the exact size of my hometown, Jeleniej Górze, which is not far from Wrocław. And this is how everyday life in Bakhmut looks like now for those who stayed there. Okay, as a cyber activist, my main source of information and also a group that I'm in contact with and my internet server that is dedicated to Polish cyber elves, Polish cyber activists, is connected with Bellingcat. Bellingcat is the initiative that supports journalism in a post-war times. It's based on open source intelligence, so they make different investigations. The one that you see on the screen right now is dedicated to Russian engineers who are programming rockets that are attacking Ukrainian cities. So the last investigation done by Bellingcat is about finding all those engineers and the personal data that they share on social media, like Vkontakte or Facebook and so on. So we know who is actually behind those attacks. There are a lot of requests that are coming from people in Ukraine in terms of use of technology. So one of the things that cyber activists are also doing is to help people solve the problems that might be solved while using new satellites images or search in different databases. This is one of the first requests that came into my server when after the full-scale invasion. Here, a person is asking for help in searching for a particular building in Mariupol so that he can be sure that the building in which the mother of his girlfriend is living, that the building is still really there. It's not easy to get real-time satellite photos, but it's possible. So we found this place in collaboration with Maxar Technologies so that this person could be sure that the building was still there at that time. What happened next, I don't know. This is a tool that is also very important and outsourced from the activities of cyber activists. This is a timeline and life map of the civilian harm in Ukraine. So when we scroll Telegram channels and we find some videos or photos, we verify them to know that on the photo is exactly the thing that is in the description. We need to learn where the photo was taken and when. And then we put it as a pin on a live map with a source. So this is the archive of small stories and war crimes done by Russian to Ukrainians. So open source intelligence activists develop different tools to archive all the news and all the messages that appear on the internet. As you can imagine, there is a lot of them. There is a lot of data. So what we witness, we cannot say in the future that we didn't know about what is happening in Ukraine now, because we know everything. This is the same kind of initiative, but different one, another life map. I suggest you to try on to learn about the life map, because it's the most actual source of verified news. So all types of events are on the live map every day since the full-scale invasion launched. So this is a huge base of knowledge. I want to tell you also about one project that I participated last spring. It was the end of the winter. It's also connected with using a lot of Google Street View and doing geolocation. The Russians occupied Mariupol since the first days of war, and the fighting was there very strong. On Telegram, we started to find photos of temporary burial sites that people had to do in Mariupol because the amount of people killed by Russians was so big, and because of strong fightings that happened in the city, people could not prepare traditional rituals of burial on the cemetery, but they had to turn the squares, playgrounds, neighborhoods into temporary cemeteries, burial sites. A lot of images like this appeared. These are actually already geolocated. So what my group was doing was to geolocate all the possible contemporary burial sites so that the people could find those places in the future, because we know that Russians cover up the traces of their war crimes, so all of this will probably disappear. And we created a base with those temporary burial sites. Okay. This is another thing that is also connected with cyber activism. This photo reminds me of one of the most weird moment of the war. This is night of the 3rd March. We can see here Russian tanks entering Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. That was the first time when they started fight and they started those nuclear terrorism thing. This screen comes from CCTV. So at night, we were able to watch fightings in front of nuclear power plant actually live. So that was for me shocking that we can watch fightings live streamed on the internet. For the whole night, the camera there, located on the nuclear power plant, was working. Then there was a big fire happening in the administrative building on that, and the camera stopped. When I got the link for this video from other open source intelligence activists, it was like maybe 10 people watching this, and in 1 or 2 hours it was like 200 people watching it at the same time, because no one knew what will happen and how dangerous this situation was. I geolocated the camera and I knew where it's put, so I was just following the events there. I want to introduce to you also another interesting experiment that was done by Swedish journalists. They created 2 cyber bots to use TikTok. One bot was based in Kharkiv, and the second one in Belgorod, which is in Russia. They created those fake bot accounts to show how different people see, how different are feeds of people who, TikTok feeds of people who are in Ukraine or who are in Russia. So this is the screen from the video about this experiment. When the bot Nikolai is in Kharkiv, he can see a lot of streams showing the war, while Alexei, who is the bot that with VPN and his IP is located in Russia, he just see the video of dancing people on the street, cats, and so on. The cities are very close to each other, but the content that is shown for citizens into cities, one might think that they are really, really far away. Yeah, so TikTok is also a very important place for following the war in media. So yeah, geographically, the cities of Kharkiv and Belgorod are not far apart, but on TikTok, they live worlds apart. Another interesting initiative is done by Squad 303. This is the app and the website called 1920. It is made to overcome the ban of information that is currently in Russia. So you can send SMS, WhatsApp message, email, or call on, or send Telegram message to random Russian people. This is what I was also doing. Squad 303 is like Division 303 Polish. The site is 1920, so it's also a very important symbolic date in Polish history. It is quite interesting trying to contact some random people in Russia to see their reaction, to discuss with them what they know about war, because actually they know a lot, and a lot of them is supporting their country. This is for me very interesting, and then I started to dig more the Russian propaganda. I started to watch the Russian TikTokers promoting war, and yeah, the thing that Russians are not protesting against the war in big European countries, and also there is such a small actually I have a feeling that most of them support what is happening because of this. These are elves. I use a lot of elves images that are from anime because it helps me to distract from the violent and graphic content that I deal with every day. And also, yeah, my group is called Cyber Elves. This is the idea that comes from Lithuania, from 2014, the year of illegal annexation of Crimea by Russian Federation. That was the moment when people in Lithuania started the group of Cyber Elf to fight against Russian disinformation and propaganda. Yeah, so I still use images of elves, but don't let these images fool you. We are normal people, like all the cyber activists are normal people who spend their free time, or sometimes they just do this without any governmental support, without any institutional support. They work as volunteers on the front of Infowar. The initiative Hate Tweet Tracker allows to find hate speech against Ukraine and Ukrainians on Twitter, so that the post can be reported. So it's a huge base. This is the Polish base of hate tweets, so that everyone can report, and when many people report an account or a tweet, there is a possibility that it will be blocked, even if it's not blocked. When you report an account, the algorithm starts to show it to less amount of people. So it's what we are doing is also that we, all of us, there are 30 cyber elves, Polish cyber elves now. All of us are reporting the same tweets and the same posts with the same, I don't know how to say it in English. Jak możesz wybrać, za co się zgłasza. The same reason of reporting, like violent content or hate speech and so on. Okay. Open Sanctions is also open source tool to trace all the people who are objęci sankcjami. Please help me. Yeah. So this is a place where I found the numbers of all 3 passports that Roman Abramovich is having. You can find a lot of details about everyone who is sanctioned by the West in here. This is actually the initiative by one particular person who, with help with other activists, gather all the possible data about everyone who is being sanctioned, I would say. This is a photo of me as a cyber elf. I use the character of cyber elf also to help myself to distance a little bit from what I see every day. This helps me. This is a tool that I learned in a theater. When actor leave the stage after the performance, he has to come back again to his natural character. So when I see something really tragic and violent, it's not me, Magda, seeing this, it's a cyber elf doing cyber elf work. So this is for me, but it's also to promote the cyber activism, which is very important in the context of this war, because not only because we live in Poland, but which is the neighbor country of Ukraine, but also because it makes us, like the internet makes us all witness of what is happening in Ukraine. So people needs to remember about all the responsibility that comes with having the opportunity to trace the events live. Okay. This is a dog with Russian rockets somewhere in Ukraine. I don't know what is how is the time? Probably I should finish soon. As the last image, I want to show you the first fake that I fact-checked after the full-scale invasion. It's maybe the 25th of February. This is a smoke above Russian embassy in Warsaw. It was posted on Twitter with the comment that Russian diplomats are burning all the documents because the war is going to start. So it was put there to make people panic. I did not believe this. So my way of verifying this particular fact was that I took on my bike and I rode there because I live in Warsaw. So I just went there and took a photo that there is no smoke above the Russian embassy. So this photo was photoshopped. So you can verify facts in different possible ways. Sometimes you need to use technology and open source intelligence tools that are online, but sometimes you can do it in a real world, which is also very important in this work. As a cyber activist, we talk with a lot of people to know their version of the events. So we are not only working with what we see in the internet, but we are very strong connected with people who request our help. So we are happy that we can help, but at the same time, we kind of suffer together with our friends in Ukraine. And that's all for now. Thank you very much. Please do not clap because the dog will bark. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your lecture, and thank you very much for your activist work. And do you have any questions for our guest?
As a matter of fact, I'm a little bit confused. If this is a report from the war or battlefield, that's okay. But how we can use experience from the war with this exception of the rules to create something as a value we can use to improve the city, institutions, to help people to be more friendly, to be solidarne city. How we can do this on that presentation?
Yeah, if you could repeat your question, that would be easier. How can we? I was confused. Yeah.
I'm confused. I really don't understand what you were talking about, because we have a festival which is Solidarne City. So I was trying to understand how we can use your presentation to improve whatever, to make a solidarne city. So how experience from the war, which is exceptions of the rules, to create a new rules which will help us in ordinary life.
That's a difficult question, because then we should understand what might be the ordinary life now, like after the war. Probably what I'm trying to say is that cyber activism is something that almost anyone can do on different levels. So that's why I'm trying to promote all these ideas. But when it comes to improving the life of ordinary cities, I don't know, maybe we should just get more empathy for each other, because we see what is happening while like witnessing. But yeah, that what should be done, this is the question, in my opinion, more for Ukrainian people now, how we can help them especially. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's also interesting how you're showing us invisible factors that as well create cities and societies. And in this digitalized world, I think it is also important how we can act upon those factors. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much then.
So now I would like to invite our other lecturer, Anastasia Ponomajrova, who is an architect, urban designer, researcher, co-founder of NGO Urban Curators and Kohaty Initiative. Her current project focuses on integrated, sustainable and rapid housing for internationally displaced people in Ukraine. And the name of the lecture is Kohaty, from Rapid House to the New Housing Models. The floor is yours.
Okay. Magda is here. Magda, thank you for your presentation. Yeah, for me it was really touching and really even too much, because I could not distance with easily from this information. So when you probably mentioned how this approach to their city research, like from the very beginning, it's city research, but it also a very decent data for their potential upcoming project, which might happen, and I hope it will happen in Mariupol, Bakhmut, Kharkiv. Remember, the man asked for the help, to navigate and to share the information like in real time about his house. Isn't it the city? I mean, this is, for me, it's like really decent and sharp act of solidarity and a sort of non-conventional architecture, because tracing your personal home with the help of new tools, I think it's sometimes it's a single action you can afford now, for many people. So basically, I was born in east part of Ukraine, which could be considered as a Ukrainian Silesia. So I'm happy that I am participating in such a great festival. And the many cities you've been seen in the presentation of Magda, also from what we would call, of course, it's not that popular term, I'm now inventing, so Ukrainian Silesia. Bakhmut is from Ukrainian Silesia, and Mariupol also. And the project I'm gonna tell the story about locates in like opposite side of Ukraine, is in the west part of Ukraine, which by government now considered as, they call it, backline region. Like it's reasonably good location for the project of that kind. I can barely imagine that project in Kharkiv now, and because it's experienced a different level of insecurity, danger. I'm an architect, and this is project about what I would call a humanitarian architecture, and with some elements of reflective practice. Because for me, it's not just an urgent project, it's also a very important moment to think about the status we have in Ukraine regarding the housing policy and housing states, which also might be in some case close to Polish experience. So Kohaty for us is also, this is the name of the project. It's for us, it's also as an architect, as a very sensitive project, because you might understand the words which mean love together. yeah, it's a lot of emotion in this project we've put already. And the reason we are doing, like, besides a very obvious reason that people need houses, accommodation, space to stay. For me, the personal is a reason of continuing my practice, because I started the NGO. I established it together with my 2 colleagues from Ukraine 6 years ago. And our first project was in a liberated Slavyansk in 2015. So we've been working with internally displaced people, forced displaced people in Ukraine for 8 years already. And I think we were more ready as an architect in February than others. So we were somehow shared our experience, which of course wasn't really like helpful, but was like partially helpful, because the scale of the problem became bigger. So this is basically the photo from our research project in Mariupol. I feel like pleased that I visited Mariupol many times as a researcher, as an architect, so I have a good memory of the city. If we are trying to come back to Magda's presentation and her first slide with a couple from Bakhmut, yeah, it's hard to say about their intention and about the situation. I don't know it. Like, just try to create some connection to what you saw already. That this couple might, or like couple in a similar situation, they might flee the city, Bakhmut, which is obviously the case, because people know that this is city not secure, and they need to move, yeah? But people didn't, and we as an architect realized that probably architecture is not the first argument for them to leave, but could be the second. Of course, like creating rapid house now in the west part of Ukraine is dealing with like accommodating those who already like moved, yeah, who flee from their native houses, native homes to new communities, new city, new environment. And for us to provide this rapid house, it's a matter of safety. So architecture could save lives in this case, because people could consider that opportunity to flee, including the options for housing. So once they know that the house is available, maybe they would flee like faster, earlier. They make the decision. Probably the main argument for them is the safety of like on roads, like the logistic safety. Yeah, it's obvious that it might be really dangerous and difficult to travel, but house could be the second. Not sure, but 100%, but could be. Yeah, but the safe house for the short term might not be the safe house for the long term. So there might be some inner conflict within the community accommodating their space. Or there might be some eviction or conflict with the host community. So to do the ultimate safe space for accommodation, for us it means to integrate many principles, like the sustainability and integration on a different level. So this, I would say, like basic principle we are trying to rely on. And when we talk to a non-architectural community, we are not using this scheme. We're telling that we are not building square meters, we are building community. We're building something extra, like we do more than square meters. So if I would talk about integration and how we're working with that principle, I would start with urban integration. For us, it's a huge matter, the location. So we are actually, we could influence on location, like selecting location. We could advocate the best location for those who are in charge of selecting them. So basically all of our shelters, and we have for this moment 4 of them, located either in the city center or very close. They're located next to urban amenities, urban facilities, with a like very short pedestrian connection to potential jobs, offices, and for us it's important to provide that urban environment, that opportunities for communities. Do not accommodate them like in the city outskirts. We also, like, if we are going to the scale of the building, we provide communal spaces, even if it's not that easy and we need to kind of cut out some of their private spaces for IDPs. It's of course the huge sense for us to accommodate as more people as possible. But we sometimes had to do this difficult decision to transform one of the potential private room into communal spaces. We want people to communicate if they want to. Basically, it's not that kind of a linear strategy because many people experience like 4 or 5 months of living in transit shelter, which is basically their huge sport facilities where people live without any private spaces. So, and it's mean for us as an architect that communal spaces, it's not always such a kind of necessary for that people. They might not need more privacy rather than, but again, like if we talk about that building, which could have like 200 beds, for instance, it makes sense to do the communal spaces in order to provide people opportunity to decide whether they would like to be in the private spaces or go to the communal spaces. We also involved like forcibly displaced people in our project, but not all of them, not only them, but also host community. So we are, as an NGO, with some, I would say, like social capital, we can make an announcement on Instagram, on other media, and like calling people to come and help with not complicated work, yeah. And we figure out that this is a moment of co-creation, of this co-rehabilitation of the building, is a sort of social act of integration, sometimes first integration between IDPs and host community. So they came on the one building, worked together, talked to each other, and that's like this happened, the first act. And I think abandoned building, and mostly abandoned building with sort of like history, which could be the case for would say, host community, is a very good medium space for this communication, because people, when they go just, in case of host community, when they go to help us, they go not only to the project to help IDPs, they also go to help their own cities to be refurbished. And this is also an act of long-term, I would say, strategy. We don't want to focus on the like urgent need, but we would like to see more long-term. Oh, that's the supporting community management is also one of the tools we are using. We are not very good at that because we are an architect and we are busy with refurbishment and that stuff, but we are, I think we are doing at least some basic work regarding that. So we involve sociologists to develop a sort of what we call like a social standard of living. And we hope that this session with sociologists and this document they're gonna develop soon will help them do not have too much conflict inside of the space. Regarding sustainability principle, we are focusing on working with local production, opposed to, for instance, buying ready-made furniture from IKEA. Yeah, because we would like to achieve many aims. Like first, we would like to provide the jobs for those who lost it from February, but we also would like to enhance local productions to do something. Yeah, and designing and producing furniture is a good step towards, for instance, wood frame housing, which I hope we will deal somehow one day. We are not that far, but yeah. So we did our pilot project, which was a refurbishment of the old dormitory in the city Ivano-Frankivsk, in west part of the city, just for 2 months, I think, and we started in March, so we started almost immediately. I was the person who flew from Kiev to Ivano-Frankivsk, and Yeah, and in 2 days we came up with with a local organization which calls MetaLab. It's a fantastic NGO, which now is like pooling the project and realizing the project, and now in Ivano-Frankivsk and also in Kamenets-Podilsky. So we like in 2 weeks we've come up with the idea that we need to do that. So it was really fast decision, I would say. And we were lucky that we met in one of the dormitory, the local community of their university, like the teachers and staff from university, who already came to the place. And since they are not architects, they started to do it in a way they understand the repairing and the refurbishment. And they were lacking of resources. And once we came up, we like really like become immediately friends, because we said, oh, we have money, we have expertise, we have workers, craftsmen, those who, like engineers who could fix the sewage system, water pipes. And they were really happy. This lady was really happy that we came. So, and we were happy to jump into the project, which already happening, because we thought that, this community would probably do something after we finish. And we finished. This was our pilot, so we didn't want to stop on the first project. We did want to go further. Yeah, this is basically the changes happening with the building in 2 months. And we also succeed with it with a relatively small amount of money. So we've spent $40 per square meters. But now we are not telling this because it's too small. If we would tell that, donor will like, oh, do like not 500 beds, but do 1,000. And we will be crazy, because this is, I think this building we found was kind of not typical. The most of the abandoned building has better problem with engineering system. And this just was a very lucky moment, so we could spend this amount of money. Now we are spending, I think, very close to 200, because we fixed roof, we fixed sewage, we do like many extra work we didn't do in this case. But all in all, we did like, I think, a very smart transformation of the room and communal spaces as well. That property, that dormitory is a state property. So we were not able to, I would say, select a resident, select IDPs. And we understood that this is a very important to do so, and if we want to play a role in that. We want to be decision maker in selecting IDPs. Because if we are not doing that, it might happen that this community wouldn't be what we would call like self-sufficient, or like has at least potential to be self-sufficient. And we wanted to experiment by accommodating people, like by helping people to live together, like from different groups, from different backgrounds. And that's why we started the project in a private property. This is abandoned hotel, again in Ivano-Frankivsk. It's smaller object. It could accommodate just 19 IDPs. But it's nice because we can play with their like building community. So we could select people who could have jobs, do not focus on just only vulnerable, which was the case with the previous project. Yeah, in the photo you can see like many IDPs. Yeah, the girl, if you see it from you. So she is from Kharkiv, she flee, and she joined our team during the dormitory project, and now she stay with us like as a staff. So we kind of employed her and many others. So like we basically have, I think, 5 people in our group in Kohate team from IDPs who worked with us with the volunteers, but then stay as a team member. So this is kind of I'm also like feel myself like an IDP in this project. Once we've done this dormitory, of course, we become very visible in the city. The city is still facing the huge demographic challenge because the city needs to accommodate, I think, like 30% of its own population. So it's a lot, and that's why, like, after the dormitory, we've done the dormitory, we've got many offers. Okay, let's do something with our property. Everybody suggesting their own abandoned spaces. And Department of Education, which was in charge, it's still in charge of the accommodating people in schools, for school facilities and sports facilities, they suggested their former office building. Like basically in the city center. So we did not negotiate a lot. We took it because it's nice. And yeah, it has a beautiful location and surrounded green area. And we thought, okay, we can transform it. Then it turns out that we need to change every heating radiators and all of the pipes. So we are now slightly out of budget, but we are not giving up. So like, yeah, that's happened because when you deal with an abandoned building, you never know what will be. I mean, there is no inventarization. So of course, we do this assessment phase. We came with our engineers and we check, but we most of the time too positive. As it turns out, most of the time we did not figure out how it's complicated. And this is the force of our location. It's in another city. It's Kamenets-Podilsky. This city is also accommodate, I think the highest percentage of the population, like in correlation to the population. It's a small city, but the percentage of IDPs is extremely high for that, for Ukraine. Maybe because the city is very close to the border with Romania. Yeah, I don't know, like a lot of people decided to flee to Ivano-Frankivsk, and we started an even more ambitious project in Kamenets-Podilsky because it's a huge building, 4 stories, and but I think we will be able to accommodate 250 IDPs in here. Yeah, since we have a huge problem with housing, that's really huge. So we have, I think, less than 1% of the social housing in the country. So I think it's less in Poland, and it's less in Czech Republic. It's definitely less in Switzerland. And this social housing is, okay, will not help us in the future. Now. So that's why we decided to kind of research what we've done in Kohati, because we've done not just this integration, sustainability work and architecture, but we also worked a lot on the with with capacity building. We worked a lot with the regional administration, city administration, municipalities. So we worked a lot with different stakeholders, and we feel that there is like good opportunity to advocate some of the changes, at least on the municipal level. So in case of these shelters I've showed to you, we've signed the contract, we as an NGO, for 4 months free rent for IDPs. But we need to think out now what would happen in 4 months. Yeah, because for us it's a golden opportunity to introduce new standards. We do believe that we will not have, I hope the peace will be established, we will not have this opportunity. We need to advocate some changes now, because it would be more difficult when the aggressor will be like pushed out, I don't know, kick off, and we will be focused on more like internal debates. Yeah, I would say. Of course, we look at this project as also like community development project. And we as an organization of Kohati, we don't want to do this work which I would call like space operation. We want to research, we want to select spaces, we want to design, we want to make like refurbishment work, but we don't want to be a space operator. And we understand that to realize this aim, we need to empower like community of IDPs to do that work. And that's a very good idea, but in real practice, and we did some action toward that. We organized community development workshop, which is very difficult to do in this rapid project when you work against the clock, but we try to do our best. Yeah, because this shortage of time is very harmful for a participatory project. When you try to finish the space before the December, so you cannot rely on your criteria to empower community. You should prioritize something, or architecture criteria, or this I would call soft. So this dilemma we are not solving yet. We've just realized that we have it because, yeah, and I hope that we'll be finding the answer on that. I think we are quite taking seriously sharing information about the project in media. So you can follow us on the website. We're also present in Instagram. We would be more than helpful for any reaction, likes, reshares, because yeah, we have this goal, a big goal to contribute to the changes of housing market in Ukraine, and maybe it will help your country somehow. So that's why we need to be visible. Yeah, and if you have some question, I would be more than thankful to answer now or during the exhibition, because it's worth to say that there is some connection between what I presented right now and the exhibition the part of the exhibition we did together with Tandem Viduki from Warsaw. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
I think this is her way to say thank you as well, because she cannot clap, right?
So yeah, are there any questions from the public? I have one on my own, because if there is no one to ask, because I think the example that you showed us is like really beautiful way of bottom-up approach with help of specialists. And my question is, sorry, maybe we can move here. In the future, do you think in our cities it will be important to collaborate between those approaches of top-down and bottom-up, or one of them will be more important?
I wouldn't call Kohati bottom-up approach. It was initiated by NGO, definitely like has initiative ambition like as bottom-up. But we are sort of hybrid project. We've worked a lot with this municipality. Those property you saw, not like us, and we did not squat it. So we agreed with departments, with the municipalities, sometimes with state, in the case of Kamenets-Podilsky, to firstly to do this refurbishment work, but then to rent it out for IDP. So this is, I would call, hybrid project, which includes a piece of top-down strategy. And for us, it's important. I've been working a lot with as a like ultimate bottoms-up activist. I did not care a lot about working across the sector and realized this is, yeah, that's nice. It's a sort of speculative way. It could inspire, but it does not provide the changes we need. So as I see right now, for the fundamental decent changes, we need to cooperate with municipalities wherever we find them too slow, less creative. Yeah, we need them. I mean, otherwise, I don't know. We will not do that much changes we deserve.
Thank you very much. And yeah.
Sorry for being so. Okay. You started with a very good point of view, principles, which will be very important very soon when the war ends. Doesn't matter when. So principles will play, as usually, most important roles. You started with 3. It was sustainability, rapid, and third was what?
Integration.
Integration. Okay. So it's a question, general question for the whole country, for the other country as well, which will help very much, I believe. What is most important? Because you said sustainability, but usually it's either fast or cheap or good quality. So it will be something you have to design as a country or you personally. How you would like to get back the flats you're actually losing by the war. The shortage of flats will be that impact which will force you to decide cheap, fast, or good quality. In this term, sustainability. The other question is it really a good idea to convert, for example, kindergarten into a place to live? Because then what you will do with kids? Usually in the area we are living in, Poland and Ukraine and other so-called East countries, we had a shortage of such services like kindergartens, schools, etc., etc., etc. So that's the other questions of that right decisions. It's mean principles. What principles you're going to follow or you're going to implement in that getting back what infrastructure, generally speaking, what you are actually losing?
No, basically, I'm quite a bit sad that you didn't mention that the main principle for us is safety. So the safe was in a corner, like in the center of this diagram. The safety house is the main principle. This safety principle could be realized by this complicated, I agree, compromise between speed and money, resources, or could be realized by adding bomb shelters to the initial stock. So it's, but I think for many years ahead, this is gonna be the main principle for us, for Ukrainians, and for those who gonna visit the country. Yeah, I agree that it's really difficult to define, like to find a compromise. But regarding the revitalization of abandoned building, it's definitely the way to diminish expenses. And also with a lot of other benefits, like dealing with the city heritage, or as I said, encourage host community to help to revitalize it, because they have a sense of belonging to this abandoned building. So I wouldn't say that the refurbishment is like the ultimate and the best way to solve our housing problem, but it's definitely the sort of new one for our practice. And it's sort of quite conventional and quite comprehensive. It's more comprehensive, sorry. So it's more comprehensive way to do so. Because it's really like, as I said, I didn't hide the budget we spent, so it's really not that expensive. The one problem, it's the house for like, I would say mid-term stay. So it's not the house for life. What we are doing what we are doing like more as mid-term. But I would tell we are doing our best with the resources we have, with the time we have, with the people we have, so like everything, so we do. And we just need to reflect on what we are doing. We, as we are doing now, I suppose, with an exhibition. And I think we just need to improve it. But if we try to look at the national scale, like the country scale, and the problem we are facing as a house, so just keep in mind also the very important fact that we are demographically decline. So we are now, I think, 48 million people. And I don't know which the correct number. Maybe it will be even smaller. And I would ask the question, do we need to build a lot of new houses? And maybe we need to focus on their old one. and take care of them, refurbish them. This is our contribution. This is a contribution of Kohat again. I think it will be valuable for their post-war revitalization. And regarding your question and concern about that, we kind of take away their like city amenities, like kindergarten. So all of the buildings I'm presenting today was abandoned for many years. They were not ready for kinders, pupils, and people to accommodate it. So we didn't like kind of, you know, reappropriate some of the functions and made a local host community sacrifice. Of course, because our one of our main principles is integration. We wouldn't do so because in this way we've, of course, creates the conflict between IDPs and host community. We didn't want that. So, and there are many of that buildings, really. So we didn't care about that much about our heritage and legacy, and we have a lot of abandoned buildings. This could be the one of the answer to your question, but obviously not the only one.
And this connects with the panel that will be tomorrow, that if with the name "If We Should Actually Build."
Thank you very much once again.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, thank you.
If you have some other questions for our guest, you can do it actually right now because we need a few minutes for a technical break and we'll be right back.
Więc prosiłabym o uciszenie powoli rozmów i zajęcie miejsc. To będzie już nasz ostatni wykład, więc zapomniałam, że rozmawiamy po angielsku. I'm very sorry, let's switch to English once again. We're coming back with our lecture. Here is our last guest to speak. It's Karolina Keyzer, and she will tell us about building solidarity. She's an architect, also partner in architecture studio Only If, lecturer at the Yale School of Architecture. In her interest and in her projects, she combines various scales and problematics from the interior and installation to urban scales and also housing. She worked with OMA in Rotterdam and Hong Kong. She graduated of the Faculty of Architecture at Krakow University of Technology and also Yale School of Architecture. Please welcome her.
I can see that the dog is welcoming everybody. Hello everyone, my name is Karolina Keyzer. I'm not going to repeat the introduction, but today I'm going to talk about building solidarity, and it's not directly related to maybe other presentations. Can you hear me? Good, okay. It's a presentation that tries to show how in my practice, in our practice, we're trying to introduce topics that relate to solidarity, but also try to find spaces in otherwise maybe somewhat typical buildings that are getting built around the world, specifically in New York and in Poland where I work, and how those topics kind of hopefully appear in some of the projects we'll be working on. This is a drawing by Atelier Bauwa, which is showing how architecture and urbanism are working together, and that's how we think about architecture in our practice. For us, buildings and urban planning are one thing. That's how I was educated, and that's how I think about the city. So we never think about a building as a singular object. We always think as something that exists in a context, and it has impact on the context, and vice versa. This is the relation we're trying to do or perform in any scale we're working in, whether that's interior design, a house design, or a building design. I'm also teaching in architecture school. I've been teaching with Tatiana Bilbao and Frida Escobedo in Yale School of Architecture. And the topics we're teaching are very much related to the topic of the festival and have to do with how we can live together. The studio I taught with Tatiana Bilbao was called Lost Commons, and we try to uncover the lost opportunities to live together and share spaces and share activities that create community. With Frida Escobedo, we worked on a project that was called Extended Domesticity, that talked about other functions that should or could exist within housing and within cities that would allow people to get together, to share resources, and to create communities. So I'm going to show two projects. One is an affordable senior housing. It's a 84-unit senior affordable housing located in Brooklyn, in New York. It's a project we did a couple years ago, and we received permits for construction. It's a project for a non-profit developer. So there is an existing developer that it's a non-profit, non-governmental, non-profit developer that works with local community. And they've worked with local community for a long time, refurbishing buildings, refurbishing old apartments, refurbishing buildings, not unlike the ones we saw earlier, for housing, given lack of housing and housing crisis, but also very high number of homeless people in New York City. And that specific building is dedicated to formerly homeless and senior people. So in design, we were thinking specifically about this demographic and about this age group. When we thought about designing, we not only thought about units, but we tried to think about spaces where community can be created. We also thought about health. We thought about physical health, how people move around the building, how people with disabilities and mobility issues can get around all spaces in the building, but also about mental health, how older people who are often alone and don't have family around them can find their new family within the building structure. And we thought about spaces specifically designed for that in a building. We also thought about combining seniors with very young children. So as part of the community facilities and program in a building, we proposed a nursery and a kindergarten. So mixing of different ages, it's a benefit for both, and it doesn't relegate the seniors only to their own demographic group. So project is very simple and it exists in a very specific urban context with very specific zoning regulations, with very specific building regulations, and we had to work both with the developer and the city to build a house. When we try to permit a project, the first question was, what is that big space in the middle and can we have more units? And our answer was no. We need spaces. We actually maximize the number of units we could build in that specific lot. And we think that providing more spaces that are spaces of integration and socialization is more important than squeezing 10 or 8 or even 12 more units. So that's how we came up with this so-called loggia, which is a big shared space in the center of the building. It's a space that people can use to socialize, that people can use to cook. There is a kitchen on one side of it. There is a space where you can organize big community dinners, you can have yoga, you can have dance classes, you can have whatever you want. And this is a space that it's a shared living room for all the inhabitants in the building because their units are relatively small. On the ground floor, we have community facilities. There is a rehabilitation center, a health center, and a kindergarten that I mentioned earlier. And on the roof, we have a space for gardening and relaxing. So almost each floor in the building has a function that expands to the community. This is a short diagram showing that, and this is a axonometric kind of exposing how some of those spaces are organized and combined within a simple geometric volumes. We also have a garden that is specifically designed with planting that create and change throughout the seasons, create a pleasant space to be. There is also an outdoor gym for seniors that can use it for their own kind of health purposes, an open ground floor that then, as operators would enter the building, can insert different functions. Moving up, this is still the image from the backyard. Moving up, we also didn't want people to only use elevators, and there is actually an initiative in New York at least to provide so-called active designs. So projects, especially for seniors or people who have mobility issues, are encouraged to have a secondary circulation, steps that are maybe designed in a little bit more relaxed way to encourage people to still move, to walk 1, 2, 3 flight of stairs a day, to still stay mobile. And those steps are designed that they lead to the loggia, which is this big open space, and we try to show in a plan how this space can be used for many different events. We have a big, probably too big shared table, which is a kind of a family dinner for the whole community, but also smaller events and curtains that would allow subdivision for different functions that would be happening in a building. And the roof that I mentioned earlier that would allow gardening and relaxation. Units are relatively small, but they're also designed thinking of people who live alone, for people who live as couple, or people who might live with a help nurse or somebody who might need to stay overnight, to accommodate all stages of senior living. And this is the project I said that we worked on and received permits, so we hopefully will be continuing on that one. Another project which is maybe a little bit less related to solidarity per se, but it's maybe a solidarity in a sense of the city fabric. New York City, it's very well known for its grid, and US in general, it's very well known for suburban sprawl. And unfortunately, being from Poland and seeing how housing is being built now here, I can see that there is a desire to repeat so-called American dream, which I think it's not Polish dream, and we should have our own, and find our own way of building housing. So in this project, which is called Irregular Development, we focused on city densification. First, to provide housing on a smaller scale. Second, to provides housing in vacant lots within very specific communities and avoid big projects on big lots by big developers who are mostly done for profits. And so in that project, we were looking at the city grid, and actually we're trying to look beyond the grid. We actually look at the irregular lots that were results of different subdivisions, sometimes mistakes in the planning subdivisions, and lots that became empty because of the urban renewal. Especially in New York, a lot of parts of the city, and especially those who were inhabited by African Americans, were so-called redlined, meaning the people who owned houses there could not get a loan to renovate them, could not get a loan to construct anything, and basically it was a very clear discrimination, policy discrimination against those people. In the 60s and 70s, a lot of those lots were actually considered a slum, and a lot of buildings that were built there were destroyed. And some of the lots we mapped were actually results of that discriminative policies and then further destruction of the city fabric. So you don't really see the gray, which is the city fabric, but within the city fabric, we actually mapped a lot of irregular lots that are usually too narrow, according to the city zoning, to build on them. But there are existing gaps in the city fabric. So our idea was to provide housing for the specific community, for the lots that nobody wants to use and nobody wants to build on, and especially not big developers. But we thought it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for smaller developers, maybe community-based developments, land trusts, which are organizations that own several lots within the community, invest in those lots, and maintain the value of that land that in New York is very high within that specific community. Sometimes it's a neighborhood, sometimes it's a block. But the third plus was also opportunity for younger architects and creative people like us, who can propose on smaller scale different ideas about housing. So we basically mapped all the lots. There are triangular ones and narrow ones and small ones. The narrow lot means it's a lot narrower than 4 meters, which is a lot that you cannot technically legally build in New York City. There are loopholes to do so. But in general, those are the lots that nobody would never try to build. And of course, there are lots that are leftovers that nobody even tries to touch. So we proposed 9 prototypes of housing. It's a multiple family housing, it's an affordable housing, so it's the rent cost is set in a way that people who are an average earners in that area can afford to live in those houses. And then we created an exhibition where we showed all the lots and all the buildable space that actually we can receive by building on those lots. And this is shown on the wall. There's 3,600 of lots like that in New York City, and 600 of them are actually owned by the city. So we also kind of create a manifesto for the city saying that those lots should be used, that this is a valid space. Yes, it's irregular, it's unwanted, but it's still a space that can be used, and it will make a difference in the community or on the block where that lot will be built. So after that exhibition, we were actually approached by the city that wanted to organize a competition for them and wanted to create a series of affordable housing projects. And we wanted to take part in the competition, so we said, please organize it. We'll take part of it. We don't want to be advisor. And yes, city a year after actually announced a competition called Big Ideas for Small Lots. So they kind of acknowledged the need to use those lots and acknowledge the impact that those lots or building on them, and especially building affordable housing with community facilities can have. So there were 23 lots they identified, and there was one lot in Harlem that was a subject of the competitions. We were one of the 5 winners, and we're now working with the city to develop those lots. The process is such that the city will transfer the lots to the winning teams that will also team up with local developers, so developers that are rooted in the communities where the lots exist, and we will together work on build housing that fits the community it's in. So it's not some kind of copy-paste design from somewhere else. It's not 1,000, 3,000 units, it's 12 units, it's 8 units. It's a very small number of units that are affordable and are matching the demographics of that specific community. So the mixture of units is also depending on who lives in the area and what are the needs. There are units that are accessible for people with disabilities. There's studio spaces for young professionals. There are 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms for families, and everything is relatively compact given the size of the lot. But nevertheless, it's a space that tries to create dignified and good quality, affordable housing. Very often when we think of affordable housing, people think about housing of lower quality, maybe very far from the city center, but what those lots and projects are trying to do is to provide good housing and good quality of living for everybody. And of course include shared facilities on the ground floor, but also on the roof where a community and people who live there can gather and live together. So those are some of the plans. I'm not gonna go in detail through them. What we also proposed is creating this kind of integrated prefabricated furniture system. And given the fact that the spaces are relatively small and small units get cluttered really quickly, we also proposed as part of the building to build furniture, which means we thickened one wall and proposed to build in all the storage, kitchens, even kind of fold-out beds that would allow kind of storing of all the kind of life things on one side, and then receive a kind of open space for everyday activities on the rest of the floor plate. There is, of course, a roof that was done before the pandemic, but after that, we realized how important access to even the smallest balcony was during that time. And unfortunately, the city takes a very long time to move forward with this project. It's been 3 years. There's different reasons why we cannot continue, but we keep getting promises that this project will happen. And we basically got a little bit impatient, meaning my practice, and we actually found ourselves a lot like that within the neighborhood we live. And we decided to basically build a prototype. Unfortunately, it's a not multiple family house. It's a single family house, but we try to prove through that project that it's possible to build affordably and relatively cheaply on the lot that nobody wanted to buy. And the price of that lot was just crazy, not expensive for New York City. Because that lot was 4 meters wide, which is maybe not uncommon in Europe, because we know examples in Netherlands and other places where such narrow lots exist. But in New York, the city zoning actually prevents to build on that lot, unless on December 15, 1961, which is prior to zoning change in New York City, that lot existed as such, meaning it wasn't a further subdivision. Those laws are also in place to prevent building housing of lower quality, of housing that doesn't have light access. But what we try to prove that even on narrow lots, even the spaces that nobody wants to live in, there is a way with creativity to design space to live. So I'm just gonna quickly scroll through that project, as it's single family house and maybe not so much related to solidarity, but it proves that it's possible affordably built housing on lots like that. So when you see this single family building, there's also an empty lot next door, and that's one of the lots that city owns. And if we move forward, we will be building kind of a twin brother of that house, but as a multiple family housing. So for now, we were just able to show how simple spatial organization and reorganizing how floor plates and circulation works inside, introduction of bigger windows, and a kind of split level system can create a very spacious space for living. And this project is built, and we of course using and sharing all the development performance and kind of calculations to prove that with this construction method, which is very simple, it's actually a concrete block and metal deck and concrete foundations, built a house like that in New York City. And the last project is something very much in progress, but it's a kind of a research of mine that I worked on for a couple years, and it has to do with public space. So to come back to the city fabric, we looked at the lots, irregular spaces, and how to build housing, but we also look at the public spaces, spaces that people use and people engage and interact in. And for me, swimming pools were always spaces like that. I grew up going to my hometown swimming pool in Krosno. We used to go to Hungary to go to swimming pools from south of Poland. So it's somehow a memory of how you interact and how you spend free time, and how in a public space you interact in relatively intimate way, right? You're in a swimming suit, you're kind of exposed with your body, with your kind of physicality to everyone else. And I got interested in swimming pools also because in New York City, turns out they were built according to very specific city policies. So it wasn't just an idea for a pool and an architect hired to do so. There was a very strategic construction first under Robert Moses, who was a planner and parks commissioner, who built humongous swimming pools with the federal kind of lawns at the beginning of the 20th century. And the biggest pools that you can see here are those ones built at the beginning of the 20th century. And they were places, very early places of recreation. Before that, there were public baths. So baths were places where people would go to wash themselves and not recreate. It was a space where people who didn't have access to running water would come. But also kind of one by one, and within time, they became spaces of recreation. And when it came to the construction of the big swimming complexes, they were fully recreational kind of spaces, and those pools until today exist and work. After Robert Moses in 50s and 60s, there was a new mayor in the city, and what he noticed was that all the big pools were actually built in very wealthy neighborhoods and parts of the city that had people who were immigrants, working class, African American, did not have access to water. So his initiative was to actually use the narrow, irregular lots, so we kind of borrowed his idea later, to locate playgrounds, to locate mini parks, pocket parks, parki kieszonkowe. This is what we're trying to do, I think, now a lot in Poland. Actually came from that 60s, 70s policies in New York City, where every lot, every space, and especially in places that lacked access to public space, were built. And one of the programs he proposed was swimming pools. They were tiny, so like the smallest rectangles you can see here are the tiny, tiny swimming pools. You cannot really swim in there, but in New York City, given the weather, given lack sometimes access to air conditioning, this is the place where people go when they're overheating. Whether you're a child or a senior or somebody who simply wants to cool off, you can go to these places and cool down. So we're actually working right now on proposal for renovation of one of those pools. It's actually my neighborhood pool. I go there in the summer. Unfortunately, most areas are fenced off because they're too big, because they don't have lifeguards. There's hundreds of reasons why this public space is considered to be kind of hostile. Parks actually would like to destroy this whole complex. They say it's too brutalist and it's concrete and it's basically not usable anymore. But what we're trying to do, we're trying to bring it back both to the public consciousness. So we're working with the local community and local government to create first a kind of desire to push for that project. And we're proposing kind of reactivating all the grounds, introducing green, but also using one of the empty lots nearby to create an indoor facility that would support the pool that it's used only 10 weeks throughout the whole year. So we agree that it's a very inefficient way to use public facility, but we're trying to extend that and propose that this space becomes a civic platform for the community that actually doesn't have access to many public spaces. So this is very much work in progress. This is a model that we'll be constructing. This is just a test and will be part of the exhibition at the MoMA next year, which is called New Publics New York, which showcases projects or ideas for projects that are supposed to change how public space or public buildings in New York City are supposed to be working and how people in the city should share resources and basically live together in a sustainable way. So I'm gonna finish here, thinking about time that we have left.
Thank you very much for your presentation and all the projects. Like, it's very interesting, especially how you work on those different scales and merge architecture and urban structures. That might be complex sometimes, I guess. Are there any questions for our guest from the public?
Thank you. Am I heard? I think the first project you talked about was senior affordable housing.
Yes.
That was with a non-profit, wasn't it? And I was thinking whether there is a movement within the developers in the New York to build affordable housing for people who can't really afford normal living in New York. As we know, there is this housing shortage within the city. And are the tax incentives for those big developers enough to sort of aid that common goal that is building housing for those people who are less fortunate? Is it working, basically? Because we know there is tax breaks for people who, for instance, offer apartments to people with Section 8 vouchers, the 421 tax break that is now maybe expiring, we don't know really. Is that a movement? And so do you see that movement within the developers? And the second question is, a lot of those empty lots within New York are being adopted as community gardens and sort of become like community hubs for various parts of the city. But at the same time, we're dealing with the same problem, which is housing shortage. And do you have an opinion on how we should handle that situation? Because on the one hand, you don't want to sort of break up the community that was built around this community garden, but at the same time, we don't have enough lots to build. So that would be those two. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. First question, it doesn't work. We still have a housing crisis, and the incentives that actually city have for developers, in my opinion, they're gift to developers because they had 30-year or 20-year, I don't remember right now, tax break, so they don't have to pay taxes on the property, and they're asked to build only 20% of their development as affordable housing. And the way affordable housing is also defined, it's flawed because it's called AMI, which is area median income, which takes everybody living in the area and takes their income and creates an average, which doesn't mean the people who actually are in need of housing can afford that. So it's not working. Like, it's working to a point, but it's not a way in which New York, at least, will be able to fight the housing crisis. Of course, there are community developers, there are local and smaller developers that are actually doing more interesting work because they're really trying to work with the communities. They're trying to create land trust, means they control several lots, and they create these smaller developments. And that's why we are interested in those, because we know that those projects are not driven solely by profit. Of course, there is a profit aspect to that, but there is understanding of what types of housing this community needs. The ownership stays within the land trust, so in case, you know, there is a need for sale, that price would be paid to the actual land trust and reinvested in the community. So for the narrow lots, we're working right now with a very local developer that was also promised 3 of the narrow lots by the city. Again, takes forever. City has to develop its own formulas, right? Like the tax credits, the whole kind of system. Because what we're trying to do is to build all the housing affordable. So we're trying to create a housing that it's profitable for those who do it, but not maybe crazy profits like maybe private developer would want, but also create affordability that is real affordability, that people who can actually afford to live there. Also, the problem is in ownership. So there is a discussion about whether those apartments should be sold to the people. And as the property values grow in New York City very fast and very quickly, how can that be something that young family can invest in and then basically draw a profit later on? So there's a lot of discussions, and that big ideas for small lots, it's a pilot. It was also a very interesting pilot because it was based on the design, and architects were supposed to respond to that. Usually when there is an RFP, which is przetarg, it's developers led. So developers are responding. They usually bring some architect with them, but they don't always care about the design as much as they care about efficiency and profits. So that was the first one really organized by New York City that was trying to forefront design and kind of creative way of designing to create not only affordable spaces, but also livable spaces. So that's one thing. And in regards to the community gardens, yes, they exist. We even try to apply with the lot next to us that it's owned by the city, next to the house we built, to turn it into a community garden. That's also a little bit complicated, but those that exist and are working, I think, should stay. And you know, as long as there is interest and community around it, I think that's something that it's a value. And also, not every single lot is buildable. You know, we mapped 3,600 of them. 600 are owned by the city, but some of them are owned by the fire department, or sometimes there is environmental issue with the lot. So I'm not saying all those lots can be built on, and that's why we need to work closely with the city to identify which ones make sense to develop, which ones are already used by the community, and it's a great community garden, and which ones will never be able to be developed because of some other issues. So it's a very complex process, and we are aware we won't solve the housing crisis with it, but we're trying to create an answer that answers maybe 5% of that, or maybe even 2%, but affordably, and you know, in a way that people who live there live a good life within the community.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the question from the audience. And we can clap now.
So for all those of you who've signed up for the walk, we have an information that it of course starts on the Ofiaro-Święcimskich Street. It was supposed to start 12:30, but Jacek will wait a few minutes so you can calmly get there from here. Please remember that you will have to either have a ticket with you or buy it in the tram. It is possible with just a credit card for those of you who are not from Wrocław.
It's a bit cold outside, so a little warm-up is kind of nice. And again, we will see each other at 4 at Barbara, we hope. There will be a panel about the city and care. So we hope to see you. And if some of you stay here, you can get more familiar with the Ambulatorium exhibition and open call exhibitions that are on the other side of the courtyard.
The Viridage.
And in the Roman Hall. Thank you very much. Thank you for our guests and lecturers for amazing speeches. And see you on the next events.